Today we have an exciting day. We've got two new models launching. One is GLM-5, an upgrade from GLM-4.7, and then we've got MiniMax-M2.5, which is an upgrade from MiniMax-M2.1. These are two new models from Chinese labs. The reason why this is exciting to talk about now is that we've got a step change in the models. And a lot of the models that we see from the big labs in the US, such as Anthropic's Opus 4.6 or Gemini 3, for example, or GPT 5.3 coming out, they're all making big gains. So the really interesting thing to see now is, would the Chinese labs keep making big gains, or would they start falling behind? So what we've got here for you today is a little bit first look. I've only had the access to the models for the last few hours. So I want to look at some tests that we have done together with you guys, and then we can judge together. So this will be a little bit of a live reaction. I've looked through some of them, but there's definitely a lot more to see. So first of all, this is as a bit of a benchmark for you. This is the Gemini 3 Pro generation. This is Opus 4.6 generation. So you can see, some issues, but pretty good generation. This is again Opus 4.6, few more generations here. Now we've got MiniMax 2.5. Now, don't judge this too much. There are some better ones, but one thing I'll say straight away is that MiniMax has its kind of stability issues, this MiniMax as well. So sometimes the generations are really good, but sometimes you get that, which is pretty bad. And this is GLM-5. So at least on this comparison, GLM-5 is pretty good. So maybe if you compare to Gemini 3 or Opus 4.6, it's not quite there, but it's certainly getting close to that sort of generation. So let's look at some others. So this is pretty complicated one. This is Angkor Wat, which is a temple in Cambodia, and it's a really cool visualization. So we're looking at Opus 4.6, and this is just like really, really beautiful visualization here, where we can see the sunrise, sunset, mist level. So you can see how really quite excellent this is. This is another Opus, a couple more generations, and this is by MiniMax. And again, like you can see some good things about it, but what I found is, if you toggle things, they start jumping around. So again, to that kind of stability point. So it doesn't mean you can't get a good generation out of it. It does have some good elements. We see some shapes, some mist is quite interesting, but the stability, that kind of robustness is not there. What we saw, for example, with Opus 4.6 here. Then we can look at GLM-5. So this is GLM-5. Again, I would say it's not quite perfect in the sense that we've got some quite low resolution mist coming out here. So if we remove that, we can kind of get a clearer view. And I would say it's not quite accurate as well. But certainly stability is higher than what we see with MiniMax 2.5. And this is another GLM generation. So again, looking like quite good. I would kind of doubt some accuracy here, but it's looking, so far I would put GLM ahead. So let's keep looking. So this is like a fun SVG test where we've got a rocket launching. So this is Gemini 3 Pro, pretty good. This is Claude Opus. Let me just skip for some of them. Let me restart. So this is MiniMax 2.5. It's quite good actually. You see what I mean, where you can definitely get really good outputs from MiniMax 2.5, but then you get something weird like this, where things are not aligned properly. So the stability is not like completely there. So same point here, where things kind of there, but they're a little bit detached. Now, obviously, no one really cares about the rocket launch as a kind of direct benchmark, but this might signal to some potential issues in your real workflow. So it could be that you can get really good output, but there might be some stability issues. But if I compare with the GLM-5, you can see that so far on a bunch of tests that we've compared, where it seems to be like particularly standing out quite well. Let's just churn through these quickly. So this is Gemini 3 Pro, Claude Opus 4.6, Opus 4.6. We've got MiniMax 2.5. I would say that's like particularly nice generation. MiniMax again, like quite nice. And then we've got GLM-5. I think they all did well here. So this one was interesting. I quite like this. This is SVG of Peacock displaying this for this. It's quite complicated. There's a lot going on. So this is Gemini 3 Pro in here. We've got Opus 4.6 in here, like really outstanding detail, and you can see the face and like everything is excellent. Opus again, and this is MiniMax 2.5. If I reload it, there's like a little bit of a delay. There's an eye missing. You can see the level of detail like is nowhere near what Opus managed to achieve. And this is GLM-5. And again, maybe it's like a little bit unfair, like in practice you'd regenerate it, but it just shows where the gaps are between the top proprietary models and some of the new open source models, that they're certainly not completely up there in terms of the overall quality. So let's look at a couple of others. So this is Gemini 3 Pro, Opus 4.6, again Opus, MiniMax. So you can see Opus here, the quality, you can see the speed, the coherence of the car, and here's like a little bit, I mean, it is something. It's not the worst one that I've seen. It's actually quite good, but you can see it's not quite to that point. GLM is quite good as well. So, like so far, my impression just looking at a bunch of these is that if you take the top proprietary models, they're still ahead. But certainly, I don't know what you think about it. Looking at this, is that if I had seen this maybe 6 months ago, then I would have been super impressed. That probably would have been among the leading generations. It's hard to say for sure without like looking side by side very carefully, but that's my overall impression. So this is Gemini 3 Pro, really coherent, really nice dog. Opus a little bit weird. Opus again a bit weird, but like has a style to it. A few more Opuses. So MiniMax 2.5, like. I guess it's like, again, there's some weirdness going on, there's some issues for sure, but that's really not bad at all. And this is GLM-5. So again, like I would say my sense is that if you were to use this for your own workflow, you would probably get like pretty good results for coding with maybe some stability issues. So let's keep looking at a few more. So this is a Caravan, and I particularly like actually this generation for Opus. It's really like there's quite a lot of things going on here in terms of placing the camels. It's gone. Placing the camels at the right path. Like this is actually quite complicated, and the way it's done is quite nice. So let's look at some others. So this is, again, Opus, like really excellent work, like really, really nice. This is Opus again, quite a few Opuses. And you can see MiniMax, right? So you can see the problems here. They're kind of floating, so it's not arranged properly. So some coherence is definitely missing. But there are elements that are not bad, right? Obviously, it kind of looks a little bit silly when they're floating, but the landscape is there. The UI is actually quite nice. The actual camels are quite good. So again, 6 months ago, maybe this would have been leading. Gemini 3 Pro, like if you compare to Gemini, like, I think Gemini is still better, but it's not like crazy far ahead. Although the fact that it's actually placed it correctly is quite nice. And this is GLM-5. Oh yeah, that one was was quite hard to even see where they are. So yeah, I think what I would say is the alignment of the different elements together. That's the theme that we see. And I would say, again, you don't really care about the 3G or 3G generations most of the time. But what you do care about is in your coding tasks, like if you give it certain tasks, are things going to come together, or you're going to have to like debug things here and there. And that's what I find quite often now, the leading coding models, I find that I can trust them a lot more to do tasks end to end rather than me having to like really work hard to make them stick together. So let's look at a few more. Opus 4.6, like really beautiful. Opus 4.6, this is probably one of the best Stonehenge renderings, and here's MiniMax 2.5. One thing as well, if you notice, like, I don't know how well you know Stonehenge off the top of your head, but it's incomplete, and this is far closer. That's not exactly right, but far closer to reality. And this is Stonehenge here, which is like not that close. I mean, it's sort of there, but that's sort of, you pick up a little bit. I think the alignment to real objects is not quite right. We saw this before as well. Although here Gemini 3 kind of did not very good job either on that point. And this is GLM-5. Again, the alignment is not there. Like, this is not actually quite right. So maybe that's another thing to look out for, is like, is the world knowledge actually quite accurate or not so much? So that might be interesting thing to look out for. Now, very important test of SpongeBob Bikini Bottom world. Yeah, let's check the world knowledge of that from a different dimension. So this is Gemini 3 Pro generation. Not like that good, but like pretty decent, I would say. It's quite nice. Opus 4.6. I mean, this is really excellent, except for poor Patrick here. Something happened to him, but SpongeBob is looking really good, and you can see the whole world here is like really excellent. So like top marks for Opus here, like really nice generation. More Opus, let's just skip that. Yeah, Patrick is like a little bit better here, so that's quite nice. This is MiniMax 2.5. Clearly compare the SpongeBob for Opus, and this looks like a duck for MiniMax. So I think this is interesting, right? So is there kind of some alignment? World knowledge is not quite aligning as much as you expect. This might matter or might not. And clearly this is like a little bit of a silly test, but we sort of see this pattern a little bit more. And this is GLM-5, which looks like he's eaten something bad, but a little bit closer to real SpongeBob. But yeah, overall world, like you can see the world quality, like here, especially here, is very far away from this. So again, not that it matters huge amount, but it's one of those things that you just like. If you get these kinds of generations, this is Opus 4.6, like, would you want to go to this, which is MiniMax 2.5? So that kind of world knowledge, world understanding, and the coherence seems to be missing. And I wonder how, this is Gemini 3 Pro, and I wonder how much that will translate to tasks which are kind of more day-to-day coding tasks. So some things you might see is that if you've got a big code base and you need to coordinate things together, I do that quite a lot, where you've got kind of a workflow going through and you need to make sure that one bit of code base aligns with the other. Like I wonder if the proprietary models would be better at that. And this is GLM-5. Again, like this is better obviously than this. Like this is MiniMax 2.5. Which is quite bad, This is better, but this is not accurate. So if you've ever seen Acropolis, like, while this is not quite accurate either, the roof is bad, this is far more accurate. You've got the different structures on different sides. This is not quite right, and the structures kind of merge together, which is also not accurate. Yeah, so all in all, my impressions is that the two models, GLM-5 and MiniMax-2.5, are getting closer in terms of the overall performance. So they're certainly not falling behind like crazy, or maybe the distance stays about the same. But what we are not seeing is that you might see online people say, oh, MiniMax 2.5 or GLM-5 is as good as Opus. I would say no, right? Very clearly on these tests, while these tests are not everything, I think they're pretty good representation of what kind of capabilities you expect models to have in terms of ability to plan, having world knowledge, execution, coordinating different bits of the code base. These are important kind of tasks that you expect models to have. And you can see that they're still lacking. So I would definitely not say that they're as good as Opus or Gemini or GPT models so far. But they're certainly not terrible, or they're not falling behind or anything like that. So the key thing to look out for is what keeps happening in the next iterations. We get all of the labs getting more and more compute. They develop more and more techniques. Does the gap grow, or does it stay the same, or how would they will develop? So, for example, the kind of test to have in mind is if a few months later we get open source models or whatever, whether they're going to open source them or not, the models from Chinese labs which generate visualizations like this with very high coherence, with like minimal mistakes, then that's a good sign that things, at least that Chinese models are really catching up, or at least the distance is keeping steady. Or if they kind of get stuck, then the distance will be falling apart. So that's something we're going to keep looking out for at the Arena.